Welcome to Late Night Riders. On this episode, we talked to Julie from West 20.
You went and bought your saddle from Julie, and it was such a knowledgeable experience that we wanted to share that with everybody.
Yep, she's a good educator on purchasing a saddle. She's done it for years and years, and I think you'll get a wealth of information from listening to this podcast.
So enjoy. Welcome to Late Night Riders. I'm Gretchen, and I'm joined by my mom, Kristen, my grandma, Debbie, and Julie.
Hi, Julie.
Hi.
So recently, you got a new saddle, and Julie was the one that fitted you for it. Julie, can you talk a little bit about your company and what you do?
Sure. My company is located in East Troy, Wisconsin. I've been in business for 32 years. We are one of the last retailers of American-made saddles and tack in the country. There aren't too many of us left. The man that started Bighorn, in fact, just passed away. So as time goes on, we're losing some of these great saddle manufacturers that built saddles in the U.S. Billy Cook passed away this week, so that's one of our biggest struggles is finding saddle manufacturers that are, still building saddles in the States. We set up at different trade shows across the country. I do a lot of different saddle fitting clinics at horse fairs and expos and try to educate people about what they should actually be looking for in a saddle. There's so much confusion and there's actually so much disinformation out there when people are looking for a saddle that most of the customers we talk to are actually very confused. Some are frustrated. Some have had bad experiences buying things and making mistakes. So, we try very, very hard to make sure everybody is satisfied, their horses are happy, and they're happy when it's all said and done.
Yeah. So, where did you guys meet when you went to go get your saddle?
So it was at Equine Fair, and it's been a couple of years now, but I was looking for a trail saddle and wasn't at that moment thinking I was going to buy one, but when I saw Julie's display of all these saddles and she was so accommodating and helped me because I was confused. I didn't know what to get. And you walked me right through it and I found exactly what I needed. So, I didn't know where to begin. And I know you had said to me, you've got to sit on it, you've got to try it, you've got to feel it. So, if you could just tell us a little bit, Julie, about like where to begin, what do you do when someone's looking for the saddle like you did with me?
Okay, well, the first thing we do, most customers come in with a number in their mind. They come in and they say, I need 6.5, 6 3/4, 7.5 inch bars. They're looking for a dimension, okay? A lot of people now shop on Facebook, they shop online, and they're looking for a measurement that is basically somebody holding a tape measure across the front of a saddle, okay? That doesn't work. So we first like to start by educating people about why that doesn't work. First thing to remember is that measurement between or across the front of the saddle is not the saddle tree. The saddle tree is back inside there. And the saddle tree has an angle to it. So that dimension is just like measuring the neck hole of a shirt. In other words, if I tried to wear your shirt, I can't wear your shirt by cutting a bigger neck hole in it. I need a whole bigger shirt, right? So the analogy is that, you've got to look at the whole size of the whole surface that you're trying to fit, the whole horse you're trying to fit, not just the neck hole. So when we talk about that, we try to explain to people that there's an angle involved to the bars. So when we look at the dimension across the front of the saddle tree, we actually need to back up to where the bars are connected to the fork, which is the front end of the saddle, what you guys would consider the horn area, and the front of the saddle. Where that's connected, that has to it's got to come away from the horse rather than into the horse. So it has to have flare, but the bars also have to be set at a certain angle. So we like to show people the difference between those angles so they can kind of recognize whether their horse is in fact more A-shaped or more U-shaped. So the shape of the horse is something that people have to identify. Most of the time, people come in thinking that their horse is much, much wider than they actually are. And the reason that is because they've had struggles with fitting the front end of a saddle. They can't find a saddle that has a fork that fits. The reason they can't is because they're looking at that neck hole measurement. They're not looking at the whole dimension of the saddle tree. So, for example, when we talk with people over the phone and we don't have them in our presence, one of the things that we like to do is kind of give them a visualization exercise so they can understand the concepts that we use. So I'm going to do that with you.
Okay.
So if you could kind of recognize or visualize an arc in your mind, just kind of a slight arc, that kind of represents the top line of the horse. So if you were to look at your horse in profile, you'd notice that your horse has a curve to his top line. Your horse has a spine, he's got shape to his back. There's really no such thing as a flat horse from front to back. So unfortunately, that doesn't correlate with the majority of saddles made in this country. 90% of those saddle trees are very, very flat. So if you look at your horse in profile and you see that arc in your mind, now imagine laying a 2x4 across that horse's back, or a 2x6, or a 2x8, or a sheet of plywood for that matter. It makes no difference. If you're putting a flat surface on a horse, there's no way to attach that and to have good contact without bridging. No matter how wide that flat surface is, it's going to bridge. So then the next part of the visualization is remove that flat surface, visualize that arc of your horse's top line, and then think about laying a matching arc on top of that. So now you have an arc on an arc. That's the way a saddle tree should fit. You should have curvature and it should match the horse's top line from front to back throughout the parts of the tree, which include the bars. The bars themselves have parts as well. So you've got the flare to the bars, you've got the twist of the bars. The bars have to match the horse's top line. If you don't have that, you have a bridging problem. So we don't want you to think about saddles dimensionally as flat surfaces. We want you to think about them as shaped surfaces because after all, your horse is shaped as well. So once you have that down and you remove the bridging problem, then we start to think about the angle of the bars and whether your horse is actually more A-shaped or more U-shaped. From there, we make those determinations, and then we're going to have you sit in some saddles until we find out what exactly is the right seat size for you. So that's kind of the procedure that we like to use.
Do you have people when you're on the phone, if they're like uncertain, send you a picture of their horses now that we can send things so quickly? Okay. And you can determine from
Absolutely.
that then too? Okay.
Yes, what we'll do is have people, if they order a saddle or they take a saddle home from a trade show or they come to the store and they take one home, we are set up for people to actually bring their horses to our facility. We have an indoor arena attached to the store. But if they're not local, what we have them do is get the saddle up on the horse, send me a picture, because many times placement is the problem. People oftentimes put their saddle back too far on the horse because they're worried about pinching. They describe it as pinching the horse's shoulders or withers. Well, the reason that is again, not because the saddle's not wide enough, it's because it doesn't have any shape. They put that flat saddle tree up there. You know, that's what they've experienced in the past. They've had flat saddle trees, so they don't match the horse's top line. When you have one of our trees, you can put it where it belongs, set it over the horse's center of gravity, put the fork over the horse's withers so it flares away from the shoulder. So when they take the saddle home, the first thing we have them do is text us a picture of the placement and then call me on the phone, and we make adjustments from there by sending pictures back and forth or videos back and forth if they have any problems.
And then from there, then you have them sit in the saddle. Then you're saying,
absolutely.
Do you feel
absolutely?
Do you have a lot of times where people say, "I think I'm this size seat," and then you go, "Oh, no, you're not." So that can be a tricky situation. Often we have people come in and they feel that they're a certain size seat, and really they should be in a bigger seat or even a smaller seat. But people sometimes become very secure in what they've ridden in. For example, somebody that's been riding a really long time in a 15-inch saddle. Well, the reason they had that is because in 1970, when you went to Farm and Fleet to buy a saddle, they were all 15-inch, you know? So that's what we grew up with. We grew up with, you rode in what you had. It came from wherever, and that's what you had, and you were happy with it just to have a saddle. So now we know so much more about centering our weight over the horse's center of gravity, about keeping our knee
not out in front of the rigging. So we're not putting our horse out of balance. So we're not putting our weight too far forward on the horse and causing the horse to be out of balance or stumble, which, you know, if your weight is too far forward because your leg is too long for the saddle and your knee is out past the rigging, you're likely to cause your horse to stumble because your weight is thrown over the front end. When you do that, that causes your horse to have a harder time supporting you and balancing you. You know, you sometimes see people that are quite heavy that are able to make a horse do wonderful, amazing things. Why is that? It's because they ride in a balanced position in a balanced seat. They're not unbalancing their horse. A person that weighs 75% what they do in an unbalanced seat will be much harder for a horse to manage than someone who has great balance and skill. So we want to help everybody be as balanced as they can in a saddle. And in order to do that, they've got to have a saddle that fits, meaning they shouldn't be sitting forward of the twist. They shouldn't be sitting behind the twist. The twist now we're referring to as the twist in the seat. That's the narrowing that's kind of under your crotch when you're sitting in a saddle. You don't want to sit in a saddle that puts you forward of that twist because that springs your hip open and makes you uncomfortable. That would be a saddle that's too small. At the same time, if you're sitting in a saddle where you're back behind the twist, that's also going to make you uncomfortable, and that means the saddle's too big. So those are all different types of things to consider. The other thing we always want to make sure people realize is as they get older, cantle height can become a problem. People sometimes think, oh, I really want to have a saddle with a 5 or 6 inch cantle, which is the back of the seat that supports you. The problem is, as they get older, it becomes harder and harder to get your leg up over that cantle when you mount and dismount. So we want people to consider that and to look for depth of seat from the pocket and the ground seat of the saddle, not just the cantle height. So those are all things that are important to us. The other thing that's important is when you're shopping for a saddle, you need to be sitting in the saddle with the stirrups adjusted, because the seat will feel completely different when the stirrups are adjusted properly. So often at trade shows, people will come in to sit in a saddle in the booth. You know, our booths have anywhere from 300 to 500 American-made saddles in them at every major horse fair in the country. When they come in the booth to sit in a saddle, they always say, oh, no, you don't need to adjust the stirrups. But yes, you do. We don't mind doing that. That's part of our job. We have to adjust the stirrups for them because otherwise they're going to feel the seat differently than they would if they were actually riding in it. You've got to feel what it feels like when it's actually adjusted for you correctly. So we always want to make sure that things are adjusted. And if you're shopping for a saddle and they're not adjusting the stirrups for you, that might be something you need to request, because you have to have the stirrups adjusted so that you can feel what the seat's truly going to feel like once you get on a horse. And, you know, we always say to people, if you're riding in a saddle or you sit in a saddle and something irritates you when you sit in it in the store, I promise you it's going to irritate you a whole bunch more 5 hours down the trail. So if you don't like something immediately when you sit in it and you can't, it makes you feel like you're going to be uncomfortable, you will be uncomfortable. So you've got to pass that one up and keep looking. So.
And that's hard sometimes when somebody wants a certain look or style or whatever, but it's about the right fit, isn't it? So you probably have to convince people of that, I'm sure, to a degree. And when you do, I'm sure they see the difference.
Yes, they do. You know, it's a matter of sometimes, again, that security of what they're used to. They grew up in that. That was, you know, the wrong size, but that's what they were used to. When you actually give them an opportunity to try a whole bunch of different varieties, sometimes that muscle memory of what they remember from way back when kind of fades after they've sat in 10 or 20 that are super comfortable and really fit them well. They start to realize that they can feel the pocket of the seat. They can feel that they have greater contact. They can feel that they can get their leg on their horse easier. They feel that they have better balance. So those are the kind of things that they start to notice after they've had an opportunity to try many saddles that really fit them well and are adjusted properly for them. So the other big problem we have is people that come in the store with a lot of disinformation, is what I call it, where they say, well, I have a gaited horse, so I need a gaited saddle, or I have a quarter horse, or I have a registered quarter horse, so I need full quarter horse bars. The fact of the matter, these are just labels. These are just stickers put on saddle trees by manufacturers, okay? So, for example, in our store, we have 13 different gaited horse trees that are completely different in size and shape. Why? Because there are many different types of gaited horses. You can't, it's like us saying, okay, here we are all ladies sitting around here visiting. We all wear ladies' shoes, right? But we all don't wear the same size ladies' shoes. Saddle trees are the same way. Just because you have a gaited horse doesn't mean you and your next door neighbor are going to use the same saddle tree. We've all got to have something that fits the individual horse that it's been created for. The saddle that you have, for example, we carry that in 9 different trees because there's such a big variety of horses. So the onus of determining which tree we need for you is really based on the consumer being able to describe to us how their horse is made accurately or sending us photographs. People say to me all the time, can I measure my horse for you? I'd rather you didn't, in all honesty. I don't want the measurement. And the reason I don't is because my determination of the apex or the center of the withers and the base of the withers and the croup, all of those things are subjective. I need to be able to see your horse. I want to see photographs of your horse or video of your horse. Even cell phone photos are perfect. I can tell what I need to tell from there. Measurements are there's too many questions that come into play when you're talking about placing a wire or something like that. There are tools out there, but again, there's accuracy issues with that. We'd rather see a photograph of a customer's horse so that we can determine what they need.
Wow, I didn't even realize that much when I was talking to you. That's amazing, though. You have so many saddles there too. Honestly, I mean, I would tell anyone to come to you to get a saddle because you had like. To me, I thought you had every saddle. I know you have more there, at the show that you're at right now. But
how many did you try when you were there?
Oh, I don't, it seemed like you helped me narrow it down pretty quickly. And I want to say there were maybe 2 or 3 saddles that we looked at. And then it was kind of down to which one. And
much different than what you thought you would do.
Oh, yeah. Totally different than what I thought. Because personally, I had ridden in an English saddle, which I liked. I've ridden in a Western, then went to English. Then I wanted a trail saddle because we were, we've been over at the park riding so much at oak openings, and I just wanted something that had a little more to it, being on the trail longer and so forth. So I think it kind of came down to 2 saddles, and it's like, which one feels the most comfortable to you? When you talk about that memory or whatever, it was hard to kind of decide after you were in a few saddles which one was the most comfortable, but it is a very comfortable saddle, and I like it. I enjoy it.
Well, the 2 saddles that you tried, the way I described the difference between those, they're both super quality saddles, both American made, both wonderful fitting trees, but you were in 2 different brands. And the way I describe the difference is the saddle that you got is someone who likes, think of a mattress, a pillow top mattress in the seat, the cushioning, the amount of cushioning in the seat. And the other one was more firm support. Okay. So the other one didn't have as much padding or as much loft in it. The one you got has more padding, more comfort. So some people don't find that comfortable. Some people like less and some people like more. But that's, again, the benefit of having an opportunity to sit in a big variety of different saddles.
And age makes a difference. I mean, it's definitely different as time has gone on. I noticed that. So I would really even, tell people, if you've been in your saddle for a long time, try another saddle, give you a call and you can tell them which one, and hopefully they could try one to see, because it makes a big difference. And doesn't matter what age you are, you want to be able to ride as long as you want to in that saddle. And it makes a big difference when you are so far out on a trail or wherever you are, and you're going to take that much time to go back. You want to be comfortable the whole way. So and we ended up, what saddle did I end up getting? I'm sorry, because you told me.
You have a Bighorn. You have a saddle made in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's on an Equifit tree built by Eddie Steele, one of the best tree makers in our industry. Your saddle has a Silcush cushioning against the horse that distributes weight. We actually have a thermography machine that shows the volume of weight distribution that we have with that saddle tree as compared to others. And then it has the cushioning in the stirrups, the leather-covered stirrups with cushioning in them, and in the seat for you. So it's a very, very comfortable saddle. And it's not, there are flexible trees out there that people are afraid of, and they have good reason to be. Some flexible trees are very, very poorly made. They're put together with staples. They're put together with plastic. This tree is wood with rubber bars put together with wood screws with a lifetime warranty on it. It's never going to fail. We've never had one fail, and I've been in business for 32 years.
Wow.
So, you know, there are different, you got to compare apples to apples, but the tree that you have has just a little bit of flexion in it to accommodate a horse's changing top line or even changes in riding styles. Some people will ride a horse framed up a little bit more, where their top line will actually elevate a little bit and support their undercarriage. So that type of riding will cause some horses, if the saddle has more rock, to become back sore when the horse is framed up and carrying himself well. This saddle tree has a little bit of give to it, so it can move with the horse. We are not saying that all saddle trees should be flexible. We're not saying that no saddle trees should be flexible. We think that it's based on the individual and what they're looking for. We have a lot of all wood trees that we're super happy with too, but basically all of the tree choices that we carry in our store are based on the shape of the tree rather than other facts. We want a high quality, super high quality tree, but we're after the shape. We need that contoured saddle tree. We don't want a flat saddle tree. There's really no use for that. So, and that again is one of the reasons why we only do American made saddles, because there are no imported saddles that are shaped well. You know, you have to stick with that American made product to have something from somebody that actually cares how it fits your horse.
And I will say too, on our side, we were excuse me, at the end of a show, like we were needing to leave soon, and I kind of at that point had the go ahead, get your saddle, get everything you need, and so you helped to make it a saddle pad, the martingale, the bridle, and it all works so beautifully together. So the saddle pads, can you talk a little bit about those then too, because you do want to have a good saddle pad?
Sure. Saddle pads, the name of the game in saddle pads is density. When you look at a saddle pad, you want to be able to not compress your fingers. You don't want to be able to compress that between your fingers. You should be able to squeeze that, and it should give to a degree, but not compress. You don't want something that when you squeeze it, it comes down to nothing, because that doesn't offer any support. The other thing you should remember when you're shopping for saddle pads is that the saddle pad should be contoured. In other words, it should match the horse's top line. So again, we have an arc-shaped horse. We want an arc-shaped pad, and we want an arc-shaped saddle tree. So everything comes together, okay? Additionally, when we're shopping for saddle pads, we should be looking for something that is between 3/4 and 1 inch of dense padding. That's pretty much the figure that's called for in the schematic of the drawing of saddle trees now. Most manufacturers are looking at about 3/4 to 1 inch of dense padding underneath the bars. So, and to think about that, when you put the saddle on your horse, the saddle tree is shaped, and if you set that directly on the horse after the saddle is assembled without a pad, the bars are not in the correct height, okay? So that's one of our big pet peeves with old school saddle makers that want you to put the saddle directly on the horse. Well, that's accurate to a degree, but now when you add padding, you've just elevated the bars 3/4 to 1 inch. So changing the bar height moves them up to a more angular part of the horse, right? So you have to consider that. You really, if you're going to set that directly on the horse's back, you should be trying the naked saddle tree prior to assembly, you know, rather than the finished saddle, because otherwise the bars aren't in the right place. So those are things to keep in mind. Other thing about, you know, when we talk about saddle pads, there's always two schools of thought. There's people that want tacky pads, and there's people that want wool pads, basically. And then you've got wool felt and wool fleece and all those different things. But the way to remember it is this. Whatever pad you select, number one, it should be American made. There's several different great American made saddle pad companies that build wonderful pads. If you choose to go with a tacky pad, remember that you want a lime-based tacky pad, not petroleum-based tacky pad. So you want something that is going to be lime-based. Why? Because it neutralizes acidity. What do you do with lime in your barn? You throw it on the floor to neutralize the acid, right? To dissipate the effects of urine and odors and things like that. Well, lime neutralizes the acidity in the horse's sweat and balances the pH against the horse. So you don't have horses with sweat sores and problems of that type of a buildup that you would in a petroleum-based pad. So then you've got the other group of folks. They like the wool pads. Okay, the wool is a wonderful thing. The traditionalists like the wool. The only problem with wool is it takes a long time to dry. So for someone who doesn't want to have that saddle pad be still wet the next morning, there's an issue there. Having multiple pads solves the problem. If you're only going to have one pad, you do need to consider the fact that that's going to take a long time to dry. Again, if you have a wool pad, you want something very dense where you can't compress your fingers when you squeeze it. Some people like a sheepskin pad. Sheepskin pads can be nice. The real wool ones are much more breathable and cooler than the synthetic fleece. The synthetic fleece can become very hot. When we talk about tacky pads, some people say, oh, I can't use that because my horse sweats more. No, your horse doesn't sweat more. Your saddle pad just isn't absorbing the sweat. The sweat is running off. It's not being absorbed. So those are things to consider when you're talking about saddle pads.
So this may be a tough question for you, but do you have one saddle that you particularly like yourself after seeing all these saddles? So I know that's probably a hard question, but
Oh boy.
I know.
Okay. As far as craftsmanship, there's different types of craftsmen. There are more production saddles where more saddles are built. They build many of a certain model, and there are companies that do a beautiful job with more in the saddle that you have. They do a beautiful job of making consistent, good quality saddles.
Sure, absolutely.
We're thrilled with them.
Yeah.
They're wonderful. If you are speaking about something that's more of an artisan type
or
saddle,
custom,
something
whatever you
that's
like.
more, then in that case, I love the Bowman's, the R.W. Bowman. He does a beautiful job. His saddles are made in Whitwell, Tennessee. Those are very unique. He can do a lot of different things. They're all pretty unique. I ride an old crate saddle. It's 30 years old.
That's cool.
It's one of those saddles that I would never part with. I've had it forever. I think there are a lot of awfully beautiful saddles in the world.
Yes.
Some people are passionate about different parts of the horse industry. I'm passionate about saddles and saddle fitting, and I think there are a lot of great saddle makers out there. Again, the biggest problem we have is that the really good saddle makers are getting to be quite old. There aren't too many people that are picking up this trade. So I guess my thought process is for people that are looking at whether they want to part with a really great old saddle that fits their horse just because it's older. It's okay to get a new saddle and still keep your old saddle once in a while. If you have something like that, because those people that made those really artisan quality saddles are retiring now, or they're gone now.
It's going to be hard to come by.
There's a lot of value in those.
I understand that completely. I want to ask you another question too. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
May I ask you how many saddles you have, or approximately how many that you use, like that you like to use, or is it just one?
For myself, of my own saddles, I keep the same 4 saddles around. They're all pretty similar. The people that work at my farm use the same. They'll use a couple of them, and I use a couple of them. But in our store, we like to try to have anywhere between 300-400 American-made saddles any time. And, the people that work with me there are all just as passionate and as excited about new saddles and things like that. But we also get really excited about great old saddles too.
I can imagine.
We just like to be around them. And there are some horses that are bigger challenges as far as saddle fitting, but we're up for it. We don't mind. People bring us horses that are very challenging sometimes, and they have scenarios that are very challenging. We work with people that have had, amputees, hemiectomies, all kinds of different things, saddles that have to be balanced for them because they're not symmetrical anymore, people that have been injured. There are a lot of challenges in saddle fitting, challenges for riders with disabilities and things. We're up for it. We work on it all the time. We've created saddles for people with dwarfism to go on and show quarter horse circuits.
Wow.
We've done a lot of different things with saddles, and we enjoy all of those special challenges.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's really, and I bet the people just really appreciate that too. That's so good.
Now, excuse my ignorance, but if you have multiple different horses that have different shapes, do you need multiple saddles?
Sometimes you have to, but if you start with the concept in your mind that all horses have top line and all horses have shape, and you get away from that flat saddle tree concept, you can use the same saddle on a broader variety of horses. No saddle is going to fit every single horse, that's for sure. But if you, let's say, you had two horses that were possibly a little bit dissimilar, but had the same kind of top line and a little bit bigger shoulder, a little bit smaller shoulder, the variance can be taken up by the contour of the tree. So when that tree is matching the horse's top line from front to back, it's supported by the bars from front to back. Remember that arc shape. So you've got the weight being supported by those bars. You may end up with a little bit of extra room in the flare or a little more height in the gullet on one or the other. But if you've got continuous weight distribution, you should be in pretty good shape. I'll tell you a way to prove that. If you have a saddle and you're trying to decide whether or not it fits your horse, let's say you've bought a saddle and you're like not getting the support you need or the understanding of whether it's fitting or not. What I have my customers do is sacrifice an old pillowcase. Get an old pillowcase, cut it apart, or a piece of old sheet or something. Just get a square yard of fabric or thereabouts. Usually takes about a square yard. Lay that on that horse's back when the horse is a little dirty.
Yeah.
Put your saddle pad on, put your saddle on, go ride your horse. When you get home, take that saddle pad off, take the sheet or the pillowcase out, send me a picture of that pillowcase.
What a good idea.
And let me see what the problem is. If there's a problem, if I see continuous weight dirt pickup where the dirt looks like it was picked up consistently, I'm happy with that. If I see only 2 points in the front and 2 points in the back that looks like you set a bar stool on your horse, then I know you've got that old-fashioned flat tree or, poor quality tree that's bridging the horse's back. That's a bar stool fit. I've been preaching about bar stool fitting saddles for 35 years. It's a big problem. That's what happens when you have a flat saddle tree. So if you just do my pillowcase trick, and then if you have a question, you just send it to Julie at west20.com, along with pictures of your horse saddled and your pictures of your horse not saddled, and the pictures of the pillowcase. I can tell you if we've got a rigging problem, a tree problem, a padding problem, tree too wide, tree too narrow, whatever the case may be. We can look at that pillowcase pickup and see what we have. And that works with English saddles and Western saddles, dressage saddles, all of the above.
Julie, you go to so many shows. Right now, we know you're at Quarter Horse Congress, one of the largest quarter horse shows around in Columbus, in our neck of the woods, so to speak. Do you get time to ride like you want to, or how often do you get to ride?
Oh, well, I went riding over Memorial Day weekend, and I went riding over Labor Day weekend. Those are and I do enjoy spending time in my arena at home with my cattle. But I don't get to go trail riding as much as I like. Most of what I get to do is in the evenings after everybody's left and the saddle fittings are done for the day. I get to spend some time in the arena at home, but to actually get away to go riding, just those couple holiday weekends is usually that's about what I can do.
You are a busy girl.
We're here at the Congress for 6 weeks. We won't get home until Halloween. So.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long time. Yes, you're so good. You're so kind to your customers, and you get around to everybody, and if they can wait just a few minutes, because you're always with
Everybody
somebody.
wanted to see her.
Yeah, we wanted to see you too. So you were so kind to take the time with us. You know, it really means a lot. So yeah, we really appreciate it.
So when we went, we were looking for a specific saddle for my mom. We were looking for the trail riding saddle. What other types of saddles do you sell? Do you just sell to one discipline or different disciplines?
Oh, sure. We have trail saddles, a lot of trail saddles. We've got roping saddles, reining saddles, cutting saddles, barrel racing saddles. We do a whole clinic series called The Physics of Barrel Racing, where we help people select a barrel saddle that actually fits. That's one of the biggest problems barrel racers have. So many of these young ladies are tall, long-legged, and when they're on their horse, their knee is out past the rigging and they're forward of their horse's center of gravity, and they can't understand why the horse is leaning so hard around the barrel and they can't get them upright, laying on their shoulder. A lot of that comes down to saddle fitting and not being balanced over the horse. We work with those folks. We work with a lot of horse trainers that have issues of saddle fitting because they're trying to ride, you know, a big variety of horses.
Yeah.
They've got a few saddles in their repertoire, and some of these horses that are being prepared for these levels of competition, that takes a lot of time. You can end up with a really back sore horse when you're riding as many hours as these people are putting in. So there are accommodations that need to be made for them. We carry show saddles, English saddles, dressage saddles, a lot of different saddles. One of the, we like to carry adjustable treed English saddles, but they're not adjustable like the traditional adjustable. They don't adjust just, again, at the gullet. To me, that's just like changing your shirt, you know, without changing the whole body, just cutting a bigger neck hole in it. We don't subscribe to that kind of thinking. We'd rather see a tree adjust from front to back. It's in its entirety. So we pretty much have saddles for every discipline. Whatever people are doing, we've got those saddles.
Neat to know. Wow.
Do you have a recommended way to keep your saddle in really good shape, a special way to clean it, or anything to just make it last longer? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, keeping it clean is key. We like to tell people, you know, when you're done riding, keep a rag with just a good leather conditioner. It could be Bic, or it could be Leather New, or it could be oak wood, or Leather Therapy, any of those great products. Keep a rag that's got some of that on it in a Ziploc bag in your tack room so it stays moist. And when you're done riding, just wipe it down a little bit, just to keep it soft and conditioned. Wiping it down a little bit every few rides will really help prolong the life of your saddle. The other thing you want to do is at least a few times a year, if your fenders are soaked with sweat and your stirrup leathers are soaked with sweat on the backside, don't just clean the top side, clean the back side of that saddle too, and use a good saddle cleaner. Leather Therapy products, again, they have a leather wash that actually will clean that sweat off of there and balance the pH in that leather so it's not drying out. Some cleaning products are too harsh and they really will cause that leather to dry out. And then once it's thoroughly dry, you want to oil and condition the back of that with a good product. Again, Leather Therapy or oak wood or Bic, all of those are really good products. You just want to make sure that you're getting all that heavy sweat off the back of that, because that salt will ruin the leather. You know, you think about what salt does your car, or what salt in your arena footing does to the metal in your arena.
Yeah.
Imagine what salt can do to leather if it can eat through your metal, you know. So we want to make sure we get that off of there as much as we can.
Yeah.
What about stirrups? You said that my mom had like a special type of a stirrup. What about stirrups?
Did you say what about stirrups?
Yes.
Okay. Well, stirrups are all about personal preference. Some people like a thinner stirrup. Some people like a thicker stirrup. Some people like trail stirrups that have a wider foot bed. The problem with some of those trail stirrups is that they're metal. And if you ever had an accident where the horse fell, that metal sometimes is not going to flex. Some of it is also sharp. So you want to consider that. You know, you can have problems with that. I like a leather covered stirrup or a rawhide covered stirrup. A lot of reining horse people, for example, like wood or Aluminum stirrups, those are popular as well. I think stirrups are a personal preference, but the size of the stirrup is the really critical thing. You know, making sure that you have at least a finger's width on each side and that your boot comes out freely, that's important. When your stirrups are generous, you're safer than when your stirrups, you don't want to be in a snug stirrup. And in an English iron, you want to have at least a finger on each side, you know. There's no prizes for squeezing your foot in a stirrup that's too small. You don't want to have your foot in a stirrup that's too small. And even, you know, you ride young horses, we tell people, you know, if you're riding young horses you're unsure of, even if your stirrups fit, don't wear those lace-up boots. Wear the boot that's a little generous that will slide off, you know. So wearing a boot that your foot will come out of the stirrup easily if you're riding a horse that you're unsure of that's just kind of good thinking too.
That's smart. That's very smart. So Julie, do you do saddle repair too then at all? Any saddle repair? Or
I don't do saddle repair. We have a lot of irons in the fire between our trade show and our boutique Western wear and our show clothes and our saddle fitting and everything. So we don't do saddle repair, but we do like to refer people to a few local folks. It's hard to find people that want to do that anymore. It seems like every little community's got a few saddle repair places, but not too many. If we ever have an issue with a saddle that was purchased from us, though, we just have the manufacturer pick it up from the customer. And then if it, you know, if a concho broke or something, that would be something that would be mailed out. But otherwise, anything more substantial, we would just have a manufacturer pick it right up, fix it, and send it right back.
Is there anything apparel-wise or anything else that you carry at your store that you would say would be something that would be that you would want to tell people is a good choice to make when riding? Like you said, you know, think of the oversized shoes with a younger horse. Is there anything else that you carry that you tell people about that might be a good tip for people?
Well, you know, we like to make sure that people are using American-made headstalls, reins, things like that. When you look at leather, you know, so much leather is on the internet that comes from foreign countries and things, and you're looking at water buffalo hide tanned in cattle urine. So, you know, when people see a leather item that's made in India, I have to question that. Here, you know, in India, cattle are sacred. I promise you, they're not making your reins out of cowhide in India, okay? So if you're buying reins from India, you know you're getting water buffalo tanned in urine. That debrides and tears that leather up. That's the fastest way to make that leather disintegrate. It's very, very unsafe. The stitching won't hold. You've got to have leather that's not that type of quality. You've got to look for American-made leather. I understand it's difficult to tell the difference, but when you're looking at leather, you've got to look for the fact that it's American made, and the leather should be substantial. When you're picking up a pair of reins, that rein should have a nice drape to it. It should be the same thickness on both ends. It shouldn't be thin in the middle. It shouldn't be flanky belly leather. It should be something substantial. The same as when you're picking up off billets or tie straps. Anything that's holding that saddle to the horse should be substantial. Your latigos should be latigo, not split leather. When your latigos, meaning your pieces of leather that are holding your saddle to your rigging, your off billet and your tie strap, they should either be nylon, and if they're nylon, they should be nice soft nylon. They shouldn't be abrasive to the horse. If they're leather, they should be substantial leather. It should be red. It should have that red color because that's what makes it latigo. That's the tanning process that gives it its snap and gives it its support to hold it in place. That's what makes a latigo. So if it doesn't have that red color, or if it's fuzzy on the inside, that's split. That's hide that's been run through a splitter. That's not substantial enough to hold a saddle on your horse. So you want to look for those kind of quality issues, and making sure that leather is even, doesn't have big, deviations in the thickness and things will help that saddle stay secure on your horse's back.
Okay.
So Julie, what's next for you? Are you doing more shows this year? Do you have any new exciting products that you're bringing out? What's happening?
Well, We are actually working on some development of a new shirt line, new show shirts that will be unique patterns, that'll be unique to our store.
Nice.
We're always adding different Western fashion lines and things like that I would love for you guys to see sometime if you ever make it down to the Congress. We're on the back wall of the Annex building. People know our location because we're in Big D's old space in the Annex. But we're always working on new saddle designs and saddle styles. We've got some new ideas coming out for spring for the horse fairs on the road. Our Western dressage saddles have taken off. We can't keep them in stock. Ladies love them because they're lighter, they're well padded seats, very comfortable. We're using a bomber leather seat material. The whole saddle is Herman oak leather. Fenders are pre-turned. Beautiful saddles, very simple. As far as tooling and things, it's minimal, but they're just beautiful saddles. The quality and workmanship is beautiful. Those have really taken off. Our reining saddles are very popular. So yes, we're looking at all new designs for spring for this year for the horse fairs. We have a new cinch coming out that is a breathable neoprene cinch that has 4-way stretch, never pulls against the horse's hide. It's lime-based, not petroleum-based, so it won't rot, crack, or overheat. Has a removable, replaceable back, stainless steel hardware. So yes, we've got some new things coming out, and we'll have them ready for the horse fairs this spring.
We're going to have to check back with her again in the spring to talk about some more things in the spring. So,
all right, well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll enter our next segment, Cantor Banter.
This podcast is brought to you by Ramm Horse Fencing and Stalls, the one-stop shop for your horse farm. Ramm is family-owned and operated and has been in business for over 30 years. We welcome you to call in and speak with an expert about your next project today at 866-653-8984. Again, that's 866-653-8984. Do you love horses and live the equestrian lifestyle? Be sure to check out our brand new blog at www.yourhorsefarm.com. We publish 3 posts per week and feature a free printable equine checklist every month. Yourhorsefarm.com is a great equine online resource, so be sure to share with all the horse lovers in your life. And remember, laugh much and ride often.
And we're back. On this segment of Cantor Banter, we're going to talk about Julie's most unforgettable customer.
We actually did the saddles for Scottie Pippen from the Chicago Bulls. He called and he said, hi, I'm looking for 2 saddles for walking horses. And I was like, okay, we've got plenty. Come on in. And he said, well, I'm going to be coming from Chicago. And then he said, they're going to need to have really extra long fenders. And I was like, oh, our fenders will be plenty long. He's like, are you sure? He didn't identify himself. And then he came walking in the door, and we were like, okay, well, we weren't prepared for that. So we had called Dan Krates on the time. This was before he retired, and we were like, Dan, Scottie Pippen from the Chicago Bulls is standing here in the saddle shop. We're going to need some fenders. And they ended up, the fenders alone, not the stirrup leather, just the front fender was 4.5 feet long after we measured him.
Oh my goodness.
Kind of funny.
goodness. Wow.
I am 5 foot tall.
Yes, that's almost as tall as Kristen.
I am 5 foot tall.
Almost as tall as Kristen. Wow.
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 Man.
His horse had to be pretty tall, too, I would imagine. Oh,
yeah,
my
it
goodness.
was crazy.
Yeah,
That's
he got
a
his
cool
horses
story.
from Missouri, I guess. He found a Tennessee Walker breeder down there that had giants, and that's what he had.
What an
That's the way
exciting,
to
that's
do it.
exciting.
Yeah,
That's
that
really,
is really
yeah,
exciting.
Yep.
All right. Okay. We hope you enjoyed listening to our podcast and encourage you to share with all your equestrian family and friends. You can tune into the Late Night Riders podcast show every Friday night. Each episode will be uploaded exclusively on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all of our latest shows. Do you have a topic you'd like to discuss? We want to hear from you. You may email us at podcast@rammfence.com or feel free to leave a comment below. Thank you again for listening. Thank you, Julie.